Welcome Duelists, this is Yorojama Blue, here presenting another episode of Casual Corner, deck profiles aimed for the casual players who want to play the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Without paying full price for a mission. For this week, we have Stellar Knights. Proceed to intro. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another entry in our Casual Corner. For those of you that are new to the show, Casual Corner is for players aiming to create decks for Yu-Gi-Oh! On a tight budget. Realistically, any archetype or deck can be considered for Casual Corner, however they must fall under two specific rulings. 1. The total cost of the deck, including the main and extra, must be at or below $120. Second, each card in the deck cannot supersede the cost of $15 per card, so you won't find cards like Pot of Desires, Dimensional Barrier, or Daigusto Emerald on Casual Corner deck profiles. This is to ensure that the deck is available for anyone of any age. To generalize the deck, Stellar Knights is an archetype that focuses a lot on swarming tactics to fuel a general rank 4 toolbox, or to fuel their 3 material requirement XYZ boss monsters. Most of their monsters work to achieve this goal, while other monsters support that playstyle by manipulating the cards in their hand and their graveyard to further set up their plays. The deck is also quite disruptive, with a couple of cards in their arsenal to slow down their opponent, while also not losing hand advantage in the process. And with that, let us begin the deck profile. To begin, I play 3 Stellar Knight Denebs. Upon summon, she is able to search for any Stellar Knight monster from your deck, so she's a natural 3-of to play for consistency purposes. One of the main aspects of Stellar Knight monsters is that their effects occur upon summoning, and cannot miss time. Therefore, as long as their summon is successful and their effects are not negated, you will always have the opportunity to activate their effects. This becomes very important with several of their key combo pieces that utilize a lot of bait and switch of the monster summoning. Next up, there's 3 Stellar Knight Altairs. When he hits the field, he can bring back any Stellar Knight monster from the graveyard under the effect that you cannot attack with any other monster other than Stellar Knights that turn. His effect allows you to access the rank 4 XYZ pool, and that alone warrants his numbers. In combination with other Stellar Knight cards, he also serves as an extension to reach the necessary 3 materials to access their Stellar Knight XYZ boss monsters. The deck also plays 3 copies of Stellar Knight Ukahai. He can send any Stellar Knight monster, or actually he can send any Stellar Knight card to the graveyard upon summon. This is important as a way to load the graveyard for Altair, in conjunction to various trap cards in the deck used to revive the monsters from the graveyard. There are a couple of 3-card combos utilizing him that can quickly bring out your Stellar Knight XYZ monsters onto the field as well. So he plays a very important role in setting up for that necessary play. The last of the 3-of-a-kind monsters in the deck is Stellar Knight Vega. She behaves like Altair, except instead of summoning them from the graveyard, she summons them from the hand. It makes it a touch less usable than Altair, but she does well to swarm the field, particularly when you use her to summon Altair himself, which brings back another Stellar Knight monster in the graveyard, which of course is another great combo extender, and a great way to bring out the necessary 3 materials for the XYZ summon. The rest of the monsters that I play are singular, as by nature they play more of a supportive role for the deck. First, there is Alsam, which works to burn your opponent. 1000 life points is a touch weak, but even resolving his effect twice in a duel can put a hamper on your opponent's life points, and it adds up very quickly, especially with their disruptive plays. Next is Procyon, which exchanges 1 Stellar Knight monster from the hand for another draw. This fuels the graveyard and gathers the cards you may need from the deck as well. So he plays a sort of utility role, but his effect is sort of minor and only used when necessary. Stellar Knight Regal is used to boost the attack of one of your knights, and while monsters are destroyed at the end phase, as per condition of his card's effect, you can circumvent this by using that monster as an XYZ material to dodge that downside. And there is a card that allows you to overlay itself upon another. So it's very, very easy to dodge, basically, to negate his bad side effects for that turn. The final monster of the deck is Stellar Knight Sirius, which recycles your Stellar Knight monsters from the graveyard, including XYZs for another draw. This is to ensure that your extra deck is always loaded with the necessary Stellar Knight monsters to continue playing the game. The spell lineup is a little big for most Stellar Knight decks, but for the reason that this is a pure build and a pure variation, and with the limited budget, you have to work with as much as you can. For the first spell lineup, I play 3 Stellar Knight Skybridge. It is slightly complicated, but basically you target a Stellar Knight monster on the field. It doesn't matter if it's a main deck Stellar Knight or an XYZ one. You then freely special summon any Stellar Knight from the deck, and then shuffle the target monster back to the deck. This works best as a card used to expand your board, or to exchange supportive Stellar Knight on the fields for other mandatory ones that you may need. The fact that it is a quick play card also allows you to be defensive as well, such as dodging your opponent's targeted effects. This makes Skybridge very versatile, and with reinforcements of the army being limited, it's one of the best ways to get the Stellar Knights you need onto the field very quickly. There is 2 Stellar Knight Genesis in the deck for spell and trap removal. Its non-targeted nature means your opponent has to be very reactive with this play, otherwise they may lose very key cards on the field. You have to be aware that you must destroy spell or trap cards on the field equal to the number of Stellar Knight cards you control. So if there's an unequal number, it means that you have to resort to destroying your own spell and trap cards, or if there are more Stellar Knight monsters on the field than viable target, then the spell fizzles and wouldn't work at all. So you have to be very, very careful with it and use it to only pop key cards on their opponent's side. The other spells I play are 1 Reinforcements of the Army to search for any Stellar Knights, 1 Upstart Goblin for consistency, and 2 Pot of Dualities for even more consistency. The Pot of Duality's anti-special summoning restriction hurts a little bit, but due to having a slight issue in consistency due to the amount of traps that you play, the more consistency you add to the deck, the better off you generally are. The last 2 spells of the deck is 1 Dark Hole for board clearing, and 1 Soul Charge for mass summoning from the graveyard. This also allows you to quickly get into the Stellar Knight that you need at the cost of your battle phase, or to get any other rank 4 XYZ monsters that you need, depending on the situation, of course. The deck plays a total of 13 trap cards, which can seem like a pretty heavy number, and a high trap card count is necessary as the overall stats of Stellar Knight monsters are not particularly amazing, and you typically need a turn to set up, which is where the traps come in. The main trap of the deck comes in the form of 3 Stellar Nova Alphas, which can negate any type of monster, spell, or trap activation while drawing a same card at the same time. It is necessary to be selective with the cards that you are negating, because it needs to tribute a Stellar Knight monster on the field to activate it in the first place. The next is 2 Phoenix Chain. It has the dual effect of negation as well as barring them from attack. This serves as an important piece to prevent them from setting up, while also letting yourself gain more resources you need to continue playing. It also can be a recurring trap as well, but we'll cover that later, involving their boss monster XYZ. Other common staple trap cards you'll play in the deck are all limited under the ban list. These 3 cards are often seen as kind of like the main trio staples in decks when it comes to trap cards. The first is Bottomless Trap Hole, The other is Solemn Warning, and the final one is Vanity's Emptiness. All three cards are used to hinder your opponent's summons, and thus is seen quite often in other decks. So you'll probably see this pretty often in Casual Corner deck profiles as well. The final 5 cards in the deck are 3 Call of the Haunted and 2 Oasis of Dragon Souls. These cards are used to special summon the Stellar Knight monsters from the graveyard, since Stellar Knight monsters gain their effects no matter how they are summoned onto the field. So, with various effects, knowing which monsters you need to summon plays a vital role in the deck, whether it be needing to special summon more monsters onto the field with Altair or Vega, or to search other knights with Deneb, or even to push for more effect damage with Alsam. It is very important as well because since they are targeted and they stay on the field as, because when using for XYZ materials, they do not consider leaving the field, they remain on the field as well. And this plays an important role with the extra deck. Once again, we'll go over it once we introduce the card himself. The extra deck is filled with Stellar Knight monsters and a general rank 4 XYZ toolbox. Most Stellar Knight monsters require 3 materials instead of the usual 2, meaning that setting up your plays for the next turn is more achievable than getting into the monster in the first place. The first Stellar Knight monster is Treveer, which we play 3 of. Treveer has arguably the best effect in the deck, as on summon he sends all cards on the field back to the hand, meaning cards that cannot be destroyed or targeted for whatever reason suddenly become very susceptible to this monster's effect. Additionally, cards of your own like Call the Haunted, Fiendish Chains, used that no longer have a target on the field to go back to your hand, making this card very reusable in a way. Treveer has the ability to detach a material to send a card from your opponent's hand to the graveyard. So realistically, you don't lose too much by activating his effect, sending all of their cards back to their hand. It's a gamble of what you pick off of their hand, but sometimes setting off that vital monster or that vital spell and trap card can be very, very important. He also has an additional effect that when he is sent to the graveyard while he has materials attached to himself, he can summon any Stellar Knight monster from the graveyard. So he makes him very versatile and always prone to swarm summoning when he leaves the field. So it makes your opponent really think of when to destroy him. I play 1 Stellar Knight, Deltros. He has a more defensive on summoning effect that makes it so your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when you summon monsters, including himself. This means cards like Bottomless Trap Hole or Torrential Tribute cannot be activated when this card is summoned, or any card is summoned realistically as he is on the field. Be aware though that the cards, basically the monsters, can be negated so it still applies as normal. He has the ability to target and destroy a card on the field, and when sent to the graveyard, summons a Stellar Knight from the hand or the deck. He's not as usable as his brother Treveer is, but he does hold a place in the deck when you need him, particularly when there's a problematic card on the field that you need to get rid of. Next up is 2 Dark Stellar Knight Balotamias. This is the 2-card Stellar Knight monster, and actually the only one. Basically, if you cannot get 3 monsters on the field, but you need to get to the Treveer play, as long as you have 2 Stellar Knight monsters on the field and 1 other card in the hand, you have access to the Treveer play by simply making Balotamias. Since he has the ability to be used as XYZ materials to any other Stellar Knight XYZ as long as you discard a card. He has the utility making all monsters on the field dark types and can utilize its overlay ability on either player's turn if you have 7 differently named Stellar Knights in the graveyard. But these effects are generally seen as nice bonuses instead of actual... sorry, let me move this up. I didn't realize it was down. But these are generally seen, as nice bonuses than actual causes that you aim for in the deck. So I play 2 of because He is also a Tellarknight card in name, so he is also recyclable with Sirius. There's also various targets for like the Skybridge as well. The final Stellar Knight card I play is one Stellar Knight Constellar Diamond. He is a very strong monster with two great effects, one passive and one triggered. The passive ability prevents either player from sending cards from the deck to the graveyard, and when cards are added from the graveyard to the hand are instead banished. The added effect of being able to negate any dark monster at the cost of the detach is also a bonus for this card's utility. He can be summoned on top of any Stellar Knight monster during main phase 2, making him actually pretty easy to summon onto the field when you need to. The last of the main boss monster of the deck is not a Stellar Knight monster himself, but he does play a very strong role, and that is in number 86, Heroic Champion Rongo Moned. I can't really pronounce his name, I'm very sorry. He has different effects based on the number of warriors you use for XYZ materials. And since swarming becomes easier as each turn passes, it's not uncommon to have a 4 to 5 material champion onto the field around turn 3. He can easily become a win condition on his own. You just have to worry about kaijus that are sort of rampant in this format, so he's not 100% safe as he was back then during the heydays of Stellar Knights. The rest of the extra deck comprises of other utility or damage monsters. The damage one comes in the form of Dark Rebellion XYZ Dragon, which is another way for push for big numbers. Anti-Luminescent Knight is also pretty strong in his own right, and he can redirect targets, so he also has a defensive measure as well. Bujin Tsukiyomi is used for draw power. Castel, the Sky Blaster Musketeer, is used for removal. Heroic Champion Gandiva and Steel Swarm Roach are both used for defensive summon negation, with Gandiva negating 4 or lower, and Steel Swarm Roach taking away level 5 or higher. So it really depends on the situation, but both cards are usable in the deck, and considering its defensive nature, it's good to even sit on one of these two monsters depending on the deck that you're facing. The final card, of course, is Abyss Dweller, which stops graveyards from your opponent. And that pretty much wraps up the deck profile, actually. Let's get this all ported up. Now, for the cost of the deck. The cost of the deck altogether at the lowest value and rarity comes to about $100 even. With the most expensive card actually being part of the main deck, like Deneb and Stellar Nova Alpha. Other pricier cards include Upstart Goblin, Vanity's Emptiness, and Bujin Tsukiyomi. However, those can easily be replaced with other cards, particularly Tsukiyomi, that runs about $6 to $7 right now for a copy, and can by essence be replaced by any other rank 4 of your choosing. And actually this applies with most of the other XYZ monsters as well. The only ones that you generally want to keep are the Treviere, the Deltaros, the Balatamias, and the Heroic Champion number 86. Everything else is pretty much usable on your own discretion, and it makes the deck very versatile in that way. Well, that is all for now, duelists. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe for more upcoming videos and more casual corner deck profiles in our lineup. Stay tuned, the fun is just getting started.